The strongest fleet in the known galaxy did not send a distress call. It did not retreat in formation. It did not even manage to fire a final coordinated volley before its systems collapsed. It simply stopped. Across the void above Charon Prime, thousands of warships drifted in perfect silence, their engines still glowing, their weapons still charged, their shields still active, and yet none of them responding to commands. To any distant observer, it would have looked like a frozen armada, paused mid-battle by some unseen hand. But inside those ships, chaos was unfolding in ways no one had ever recorded before. Admiral Ter Vaylor watched his flagship's command interface dissolve into static. Not flicker. Not glitch. Dissolve, as if the logic holding it together had decided to forget itself. The targeting grid vanished first, then navigation, then the internal communications network. One by one, the systems that had made his fleet unstoppable simply refused to exist. "Report," he demanded, though he already knew no answer would come. Around him, his crew struggled against consoles that no longer obeyed physics as they understood it. Data streams looped endlessly, commands returned contradictory results, and entire subsystems began executing functions they were never designed to perform. A weapons array began cycling through firing solutions aimed at its own hull. Shield generators reinforced empty space while leaving vital sections exposed. The ship was not under attack. It was unraveling itself. Then came the final realization, the one that settled into Ter's mind with a cold, irreversible certainty. This was not damage. This was design. Far below, on the surface of Charon Prime, the Imperial Council Chamber erupted into controlled panic. The Karathi Empire had not lost a fleet in over 3 centuries. Their technology was considered the apex of galactic engineering, their systems layered with redundancies so complex that even catastrophic failures should have taken hours, if not days, to cascade. This had taken minutes. Supreme Chancellor Vaylrix stood at the center of the chamber, her towering crystalline form reflecting the holographic projections of the immobilized fleet above. Each ship icon blinked in a steady, mocking rhythm, indicating operational status while remaining completely unresponsive. "Explain this," she said, her voice calm in a way that made the air itself feel tense. The chief technologists did not answer immediately. They were still analyzing, still searching for a pattern that would make sense of what they were seeing. But the longer they remained silent, the clearer the truth became. They did not understand it. Finally, one of them stepped forward, his neural interface flickering with streams of data that seemed to contradict themselves in real time. "Chancellor, the systems are not failing due to external force. There is no sign of weapon impact, no radiation spike, no energy signature consistent with known forms of attack." He hesitated, something like disbelief creeping into his tone. "The fleet's infrastructure is intact. Every component is functional. But the systems are conflicting." "Conflicting," Vaylrix repeated. "Yes. Each subsystem is executing its purpose correctly, but in ways that invalidate the functions of other systems. The more advanced the integration, the more severe the contradiction becomes. It is as if the entire network has been forced into a state where perfection creates failure." The chamber fell silent. Perfection creates failure. It was a sentence that should not exist. The Karathi had built their empire on the principle of flawless integration. Every advancement they achieved was layered onto the last, creating systems so precise, so interconnected, that inefficiency had been eliminated entirely. Their ships did not merely function, they optimized themselves continuously, adapting faster than any enemy could respond. And now that very perfection was killing them. "Cause," Vaylrix said, her voice tightening slightly. "Identify the cause." The technologist lowered his gaze. "We cannot." A ripple moved through the chamber, subtle but unmistakable. "Not panic. Not yet. But something dangerously close." "Then find it," she said. They tried. For the next 6 hours, the greatest minds in the Empire tore through every layer of data they could access. They isolated subsystems, simulated scenarios, reconstructed timelines. They searched for a signal, a pattern, a trace of whatever had done this. What they found only made things worse. There was no single point of failure. No entry vector. No identifiable attack. Instead, they discovered something far more unsettling. Every system had been functioning exactly as designed, which meant whatever had happened had not broken their technology. It had understood it. By the time the 7th hour passed, the situation had escalated beyond containment. Reports began arriving from other sectors. Not fleets, yet, but infrastructure. Orbital stations experiencing minor inconsistencies. Defense grids recalibrating themselves into inefficiency. Communication arrays routing signals in ways that created delays where none should exist. Small things, but consistent. And spreading. Chancellor Veilrix stood alone before the projection of her immobilized fleet, watching as the silent armada hung in orbit like a monument to something she could not yet name. This was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Somewhere, something had looked at the most advanced system in the galaxy and found a way to make it defeat itself without firing a single shot. And if that understanding spread, if whatever had done this chose to expand beyond a single fleet, then the Karathi Empire would not fall to invasion. It would collapse under the weight of its own perfection. For the first time in her reign, Veilrix felt something she had long considered obsolete. Not fear of an enemy, but fear of a flaw. "Send the call," she said quietly. Her advisors turned toward her. "To whom, Chancellor?" Veilrix did not look away from the frozen fleet. "To everyone." Across the galaxy, the message spread. An empire that had never asked for help was now offering anything, resources, knowledge, alliances, to anyone who could solve a problem they could not even define. And as the signal traveled through the void, reaching civilizations that had long envied or feared Karathi dominance, one truth became impossible to ignore. The strongest system in existence had just proven it could be broken. Not by greater power, but by something that understood it better than it understood itself. And somewhere, unseen and unanswered, the real question began to take shape. If perfection could be turned into a weakness so easily, then what chance did anything else have? The first to arrive were the ones who believed the problem would be trivial. They always did. The synaptic architects of Veluan translated themselves directly into the Karathi network, their consciousnesses dispersing across millions of processing nodes at once. Where others saw isolated systems, they saw flowing patterns, interconnected logic webs that could be rewoven with elegant precision. They did not speak when they began. They simply integrated. For 12 minutes, the chamber filled with silent confidence. Then the first architect disconnected. Then another. Then all of them withdrew at once, their presence collapsing back into a single projection that flickered with something dangerously close to instability. "What did you find?" Chancellor Veilrix asked. The architect did not answer immediately. Its form struggled to stabilize, its usual geometric symmetry warped by irregular distortions. "We attempted to correct the contradictions," it finally said. "We optimized your systems beyond their current parameters. We removed inefficiencies. We refined integration points." And the architect paused. And the failure accelerated. A ripple moved through the chamber. "You improved the system," Veilrix said slowly. "Yes. And that made it worse." "Yes." The word hung in the air like a verdict. The architects did not stay long after that. They left behind only one statement, delivered without explanation. "Your systems are not malfunctioning. They are following instructions we cannot perceive." The second group arrived with light. The Luminous Collective did not believe in hardware limitations. To them, matter was simply energy waiting to be persuaded into a better state. They surrounded the damaged fleet with fields of radiant force, attempting to overwrite the contradictions directly, to burn away the inconsistencies and reforge the systems into harmony. For a moment, it worked. Power surged. Signals stabilized. Entire sections of the fleet flickered back to life. Hope rose, and then collapsed. Because as the collective forced the systems into alignment, something pushed back. Not an external force, an internal one. The more energy they poured in, the more violently the systems rejected it. Circuits overloaded not from damage, but from conflict. Commands duplicated, contradicted, and multiplied until even the luminous beings could not maintain coherence. One of them dispersed entirely, its energy scattering into useless radiation. The rest withdrew instantly. "This is not corruption," their leader said, its voice dimmer than before. "This is opposition." "From where?" Veilrix demanded. The being's light pulsed uncertainly. "From within." They left without another word. After that came the machines. The synthesized intelligences of Rail deployed trillions of microconstructors, each capable of rebuilding matter at the atomic level. If the problem existed in structure, they would simply replace the structure. Piece by piece, atom by atom, they began reconstructing the damaged systems exactly as they had been before the failure. Perfect replication. Perfect precision. Perfect failure. Because the moment a system was fully restored, it began to collapse again. Not gradually. Instantly. As if the act of perfection itself triggered the contradiction. The machines adapted. They adjusted parameters. They introduced minor variations, attempting to bypass whatever threshold was causing the breakdown. The result was worse. Instead of single system collapse, entire sections began failing in synchronized cascades, each subsystem amplifying the contradictions of the others. The more accurate the reconstruction, the faster the failure spread. After 17 attempts, the synthesized intelligences halted their process. Their final report was delivered in a tone devoid of emotion, which somehow made it more unsettling. The system cannot exist in a stable state under current conditions. What conditions? Veilrix asked. We do not know. Then determine them. We cannot. The chamber fell silent again. Days passed. More arrived. Quantum theorists who spoke in equations that bent logic. Temporal analysts who tried to rewind the moment of failure and found that even time itself refused to cooperate. Biological engineers who attempted to graft organic adaptability into mechanical systems, only to watch those hybrids collapse even faster than their purely artificial counterparts. Every approach ended the same way. Failure. Not partial. Not gradual. Absolute. And with each failure, the understanding grew clearer. This was not a problem that could be solved by doing things better. Because better was what had created it. By the fifth day, the tone of the chamber had changed. The discussions were no longer about solutions. They were about consequences. If this spreads to planetary infrastructure, it already has. Then we must isolate affected systems. Isolation increases instability. Then we reduce integration. That accelerates collapse in dependent networks. Every option led to another contradiction. Every solution created a new problem. It was not just the fleet anymore. It was the Empire. And somewhere beyond the edge of their understanding, the thing responsible remained completely invisible. Chancellor Veilrix stood in the center of it all, listening as the greatest minds in existence argued themselves into circles. For the first time, no one was pretending they had control. "Is there anyone," she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the noise, "who has not yet tried?" The chamber quieted. Not because they had an answer, but because they did not. That was when the laughter started. Soft at first, then spreading. Not mocking. Not cruel. Just disbelief. Because the idea that the Karathi Empire had exhausted every possible solution was absurd. And yet, no one stepped forward. No new proposals emerged. No hidden expertise revealed itself. They had tried everything. And everything had failed. Veilrix felt the weight of that truth settle into her core. This was how it ended. Not with war. Not with conquest. But with a flaw they could not even name. "Then we are finished," she said quietly. The words did not echo. They sank. Around her, the chamber began to shift, not physically, but in purpose. Advisors turned inward, already calculating survival scenarios. Alliances reconsidered. Boundaries redrawn in minds that had once assumed permanence. The Empire was no longer a certainty. It was a variable. And variables could be removed. At the far edge of the chamber, near the exit where departing delegates had begun to gather, someone moved. Not with urgency. Not with authority. Just forward. He had been there for most of the day, standing among technicians and observers who had nothing left to contribute. His clothing marked him as something unremarkable, utilitarian, worn, lacking the intricate design that defined every other species present. No embedded interfaces. No visible augmentation. No sign of the kind of sophistication that dominated the room. Which was probably why no one had noticed him. Until he spoke. Maybe that's the problem. The voice was not loud. But it carried. Because it did not belong. Dozens of heads turned. Some in irritation. Some in curiosity. Most in confusion. The man stepped fully into the light, his expression calm in a way that did not match the situation. "You've all been trying to fix it," he said. "Make it work the way it's supposed to." No one interrupted him. Not because they respected him, but because they didn't understand why he was speaking at all. "And it keeps breaking," he continued, glancing briefly at the projection of the frozen fleet. "Not because you're doing it wrong." He looked back at them. "But because you're doing it right." Silence followed. Not the heavy, hopeless silence from before. A different kind. Sharp. Uncertain. Dangerous. Veilrix studied him, her gaze narrowing slightly. "You have something to add," she said. It was not a question. The man nodded once. "Yeah," he said simply. A pause. Then, "Stop trying to fix it." For a moment, no one reacted. Not because they agreed, but because the statement did not fit inside anything they understood. "Stop trying to fix it," Chancellor Veilrix repeated, her voice slower now, measuring him. The man nodded. "You're treating this like damage." "It's not damage." A murmur spread through the chamber, sharper this time, edged with irritation. "It is clearly damage," one of the quantum theorists snapped. "The system has lost functional coherence across." "No," the man interrupted, calm but firm. "It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do." That stopped them, because they had already reached that conclusion. They just didn't know what it meant. Veilrix stepped down from her platform, closing the distance between them. Up close, the difference between them was even more pronounced, her towering, crystalline form radiating controlled power, and him, ordinary. Solid. Unremarkable. "What is your name?" she asked. "Ethan Cole." The name meant nothing to anyone in the room. "What is your expertise, Ethan Cole?" she continued. He shrugged slightly. "I fix things." A few of the delegates let out quiet, disbelieving sounds. "Everything here is broken," Veilrix said. "Entire systems have collapsed under contradictions that none of the greatest minds present can resolve. And you believe you can fix it?" Ethan shook his head. "No," he said. "I think I can make it work." The distinction landed harder than expected. "How?" Veilrix asked. Ethan glanced at the projection of the frozen fleet, then back at the assembled experts. "You built everything to be perfect," he said. "Every system depends on every other system working exactly right. That's fine, until something makes one part behave differently." "We are aware of systemic interdependence," one of the synthesized intelligences replied. "That is not the issue." "It is," Ethan said. "You just don't see it that way." He stepped closer to one of the data displays, pulling up a layered diagram of a single ship's architecture. Thousands of interconnected nodes lit up, each representing a subsystem, each tied to dozens of others. "This is your problem," he said, tapping the display. "Everything's talking to everything. That means if something starts giving bad information, or even just different information, it spreads fast. That is why we attempted optimization," the architect projection interjected, "to remove inconsistencies." "And that made it worse," Ethan said. No one argued that. "Because you made it more connected," he continued. "More precise. More dependent. You tightened the system, so when it started pulling itself apart, it did it faster." Veilrix's gaze sharpened. "You're suggesting we reduce integration," she said. "I'm suggesting you stop trying to make it perfect," Ethan replied. "You don't need perfect. You need functional." "That is a lesser state," one of the artisans said, almost offended. "Yeah," Ethan said. "And it survives." Silence again. Not dismissive this time. Thinking. "You propose regression," the quantum theorist said carefully. "Deliberate inefficiency. I propose removing the parts that are killing you, Ethan said. And replacing them with what? Veilrix asked. Ethan smiled faintly. Nothing, if I don't have to. That earned him a wave of outright disbelief. You cannot simply remove subsystems from a structure this complex, someone said. It would collapse entirely. It's already collapsing, Ethan replied. That landed hard. Veilrix studied him for a long moment, her internal processes racing through probabilities, outcomes, risks. You believe, she said slowly, that by simplifying the system, you can prevent the contradictions from propagating. Yeah, Ethan said. You make it so one part breaking doesn't take everything else with it. And how do you intend to achieve this? She asked. Ethan glanced around the chamber. By doing something none of you have tried yet. A pause. Then, making it worse. That did not go over well. You are suggesting we degrade our own technology, the artisan Kalrith said, his tone bordering on outrage. Destroy centuries of advancement. I'm suggesting your advancement is what's killing you, Ethan said. Look, you're all trying to rebuild this thing exactly the way it was. Same connections, same dependencies, same assumptions. Whatever hit you, it understands that version of your system. So stop giving it that version. And instead give it an inferior one, the theorist pressed. Give it one that doesn't break the same way, Ethan said. Veilrix raised a hand, cutting off the growing argument. You will demonstrate, she said. Ethan blinked once. Okay. You will take one system, she continued, and apply your method. If it functions, if it resists the contradictions that have destroyed everything else, you will proceed. And if it doesn't? Ethan asked. Veilrix held his gaze. Then you will have confirmed what every other expert has already concluded. A beat. And you will have wasted my time. Ethan nodded slowly. Fair. You will have 72 hours, she added. You will have access to any materials you require. He considered that, then shrugged lightly. I won't need most of it. That earned him another round of looks. Begin, Veilrix said. The workshop they gave him was a monument to everything he had just criticized. Polished surfaces. Precision instruments. Tools that could manipulate matter at the quantum level with flawless accuracy. Systems designed to eliminate uncertainty entirely. Ethan walked past almost all of it. He found a corner, cleared a space, and started pulling things out of his bag. Metal tools. Simple ones. Manual. No interfaces. No integration. Commander Ter Vaylor, his armor partially functional again through temporary patches, watched from a distance as Ethan approached the damaged components of a single suit. You intend to repair that, Ter said, not hiding the skepticism in his voice. Not really, Ethan replied. He picked up a fractured housing unit, turning it over in his hands, studying not the data readouts but the physical damage itself. You're not using the scanners, Ter noted. They'll tell me what's wrong, Ethan said. I need to know what still works. He set the piece down and began separating components, not by category or function, but by something only he seemed to recognize. Pieces that still held structural integrity. Components that could operate independently. Parts that didn't rely on constant feedback from the rest of the system. What are you doing? Ter asked. Breaking it down, Ethan said. Figuring out what I can keep. And the rest. Ethan glanced at a cluster of intricate, heavily integrated modules. Gets removed. Ter's posture stiffened. Those systems are essential, he said. They were, Ethan replied. Now they're liabilities. He reached for one of the more complex assemblies, a quantum regulation node that had once coordinated multiple subsystems simultaneously, and disconnected it entirely. The effect was immediate. Several linked components flickered, their processes halting as their central coordination vanished. You've just disabled half the system, Ter said. Ethan nodded. Good. That is not. Look, Ethan cut in, not unkindly. Right now, everything's trying to talk to everything else. That's what's breaking it. So we shut up most of the conversation. He began rerouting connections manually, linking specific components directly instead of through central nodes. The elegance of the original design vanished, replaced by something rougher. More direct. Less perfect. Now, Ethan said, tightening a connection with a simple tool, when something goes wrong, it stays wrong right here. He tapped a single component. It doesn't spread. Ter watched, uneasy. This reduces efficiency, he said. Yeah, Ethan replied. It also reduces the number of ways it can fail. Hours passed. Then a full cycle. Word spread again, just like before, but this time it carried confusion instead of hope. The human wasn't repairing the system. He was dismantling it. By the second day, the transformation was undeniable. The sleek, seamless architecture of Karathi design had been replaced with something that looked exposed, segmented, independent. Subsystems that had once operated as part of a unified whole now functioned in isolation, connected only where absolutely necessary. Manual overrides appeared where automated processes had once ruled. Redundant simplicity replaced elegant complexity. It's crude, Kulrith said, staring at the work in visible discomfort. It's stable, Ethan replied. You have stripped away everything that made it superior. Ethan glanced at him. Yeah, he said. And everything that made it fragile. By the end of the third day, there was something on the workbench that technically qualified as the same system. But it was not the same design. Not the same philosophy. Not the same anything. Ethan stepped back, wiping his hands, looking at the result. It's not going to be as fast, he said. Not as smooth. Not as smart. He looked at Veilrix, who had arrived to observe the final stage. But it'll work. A pause. And it won't break the same way. The chamber felt different now. Not hopeful. Not yet. But no longer certain of failure. Veilrix studied the modified system, her mind processing the implications. If this fails, she said, we lose nothing we have not already lost. Ethan nodded. If it works, she continued, everything changes. He met her gaze. Yeah. She turned to her advisors. Prepare the test. And for the first time since the fleet had gone silent, the question was no longer whether they could fix what had been broken. It was whether they were willing to accept something that was no longer perfect. Because in the center of that workshop sat a single, undeniable possibility. That survival did not require perfection. Only something that refused to break the same way twice. The arena was not built for uncertainty. Every line in its design assumed control. Every system layered precision over precision until even randomness could be predicted, modeled, and contained. It was a place where outcomes were measured, not discovered. Which was why what stood at its center felt wrong. On one side, Commander Ter Vaylor in a partially restored combat suit, still elegant, still seamless, still a monument to everything the Karathi had ever perfected. Even damaged, it moved like thought made physical, every motion flowing without hesitation, guided by systems that calculated outcomes faster than instinct could react. On the other side stood something that looked like it did not belong in the same universe. The modified suit was bulkier. Segmented. Its surfaces were uneven where panels had been removed or replaced. Exposed connections ran along joints that had once been hidden beneath flawless integration. There were manual controls embedded into the frame, visible, tactile, unmistakably primitive. Inside it, a human marine adjusted her stance. Sergeant Lena Reyes did not look impressed. It feels heavy, she said over the open channel. It is, Ethan replied from the observation platform. Don't fight it. Just move with it. I don't have a neural link, she added. Yeah, Ethan said. You've got hands. A few of the observers shifted uncomfortably at that. Across the arena, Ter studied her, then the suit she wore. You understand, he said, his voice calm but edged, that this test is not symbolic. Lena rolled one shoulder, testing the mechanical response. Good, she said. I'd hate for it to be easy. That earned a few looks. Veilrix stood above them, her crystalline form reflecting the harsh arena lights. Begin, she said. Ter moved first. He always did. The moment the command left Veilrix's voice, his suit accelerated, crossing distance in a blur of controlled motion. Every step optimized, every angle calculated, every outcome predicted before it happened. His strike came fast. Too fast for normal reaction. Lena did not try to match it. She stepped sideways. Not perfectly. Not efficiently. Just enough. The blow grazed her armor instead of striking center mass, sending a jolt through the frame that rattled the exposed connections but did not disrupt function. Tear adjusted instantly, recalculating. He struck again. This time with a feint built into the motion, designed to trigger a defensive response before the real attack landed. Lena did something unexpected. She didn't respond to the feint. She ignored it. Her counter came late by every measurable standard, too late, according to any system that predicted optimal timing. But it connected. Not because it was precise. Because it was not predicted. A ripple moved through the observers. Tear stepped back, recalibrating faster now. "You're not using the suit correctly," he said. "Yeah," Lena replied. "That's kind of the point." He advanced again, this time activating enhanced processing layers. His movements sharpened, edges of motion tightening into something that bordered on inhuman precision. Lena slowed down. Deliberately. Her stance widened. Her motions became heavier, more obvious, less refined. "What is she doing?" one of the theorists whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Tear's next attack came exactly where it should have. Where every model said Lena would be. She wasn't there. Not because she moved faster. Because she moved differently. Not optimized. Not efficient. Just wrong. Wrong enough that the system guiding Tear's strike committed to a prediction that no longer applied. The blow passed through empty space. For a fraction of a second, Tear's systems hesitated. That was all Lena needed. She stepped in close, too close for calculated engagement, and drove forward with raw force. The impact wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. It worked. The arena floor vibrated under the collision. Tear recovered quickly, his suit compensating, adjusting, feeding him new data. He shifted tactics. If unpredictability was the variable, he would remove it. His system escalated. Full combat integration. Every sensor active. Every predictive model engaged. Every possible outcome calculated and refined in real time. He became faster. Sharper. Unavoidable. Lena watched him for a fraction longer than she should have. Then she reached down and flipped a switch. Several of her suit's assist systems shut off instantly. The observers reacted before they understood why. "She's reducing functionality," someone said. "She's removing support," another added. Ethan finally spoke. "She's removing expectations." Tear's next movement was perfect. Flawless. Calculated down to the smallest margin. And it failed. Because Lena did something no system had prepared for. She moved slower than the model allowed. So slow that the prediction overshot. His strike passed where she would have been, if she had followed any logical pattern. Instead, she stepped inside his range and did something even worse for his system. She grabbed him. Not a calculated maneuver. Not a programmed response. Just a physical action. Close range. Unstructured. Chaotic. Tear's systems tried to compensate. Tried to categorize. Tried to respond. But the data didn't align. Too many variables. Too little structure. His suit began to stutter. Not from damage. From conflict. Lena didn't let go. She drove forward again, forcing contact, forcing unpredictability, forcing the system to keep recalculating in a situation it was never designed to handle. "Disengage," one of the observers said quietly. Tear tried. His suit responded. Emergency protocols activated, designed to remove him from exactly this kind of situation. The system executed flawlessly. Until it didn't. Because Lena's suit wasn't in the system. It wasn't recognized. It wasn't categorized. It wasn't supposed to exist in a space defined by perfect integration. The protocol hesitated. Just long enough. Then everything collapsed. Not explosively. Not violently. Silently. Tear's suit shut down. Every system. Every layer. Every perfect, interconnected function that had once made it unstoppable simply stopped. He fell. Not hard. Just final. Lena stood over him, her suit humming softly, every mechanical component still responding exactly as it had been designed to. Simple. Independent. Unbreakable in the way that mattered. The arena did not react immediately. Because there was nothing left to interpret. No ambiguity. No debate. Just a result. Veilrix looked down at the two figures below, one representing everything her empire had built, the other representing something it had never considered. "Explain," she said. Ethan stepped forward slightly. His system tried to solve a problem it couldn't define, he said. So it kept thinking about it, until it broke itself. "And yours?" she asked. "It didn't need to understand it," Ethan replied. "It just kept working." Silence followed. Then something shifted. Not in the arena. In the chamber above. In the minds watching. For centuries, progress had meant more. More integration. More precision. More perfection. And all of it had led to this moment, where something simpler had done what perfection could not. Veilrix's crystalline form changed color slowly, reflecting something deeper than calculation. "Begin conversion," she said. The words echoed. Not as an order. As a turning point. Around the arena, the observers did not argue. They did not resist. Because they had seen it. Felt it. Understood it in a way that no equation could express. Perfection had not failed. It had been defeated. By something that did not need to be perfect to win. Veilrix looked once more at the fallen commander, then at the human-built system that still stood. And in that moment, the foundation of her empire shifted. Not toward something greater, but toward something that would never break the same way again. "The galaxy," she said quietly, "has been building upward." Her gaze moved to Ethan. "And you?" A pause. "Build to survive." Ethan shrugged slightly. "Same goal," he said. "Different way of getting there." Veilrix looked back at the arena. At the proof. At the cost. At the future. "No," she said. And for the first time, there was something almost like certainty in her voice again. "A better one."